Greetings, everyone. Steve, Peter Chords of Kindness. How you doing today? Hopefully your weaving has been happy and it's been neat, clean, and tight. That's my tagline. Neat, clean, and tight. Let's see. I thought about this, and I started this YouTube channel, and I've had people ask me, "How do you do that? How do you do this?" And, teach how to do that. And I thought about it, and I don't want to be like all the other YouTube channels. Nothing against them, not talking down about them, not talking down about the quality of their videos by any means. Look at mine. Like I've said in the past, I am not a filmmaker. I am a paracordologist. I know how to make paracord bracelets. But I am by no means an expert. But I have learned a few tips and tricks through constant practice and experience. And that's what I want to share with people. Not necessarily over here, under there, pull tight, repeat. If you want to learn that, there's thousands of video tutorials to show you how to weave a specific bracelet. What I would like to impart to people is, dare I say, the wisdom, simply tips and tricks, insights that I have learned through experience. That's what other videos don't teach you, if that makes any sense. Hopefully that makes sense, and I don't want to come across as arrogant, because by all means, those who know me know that that is not me. But there are things that you learn from experience that most videos, books, they don't teach. You simply have to learn by doing it. And I've done this enough that I've learned a thing or two. What's the commercial say? We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two, right? Okay, with that said, I try to make this brief. And like I said, just simple tips and tricks, things I've learned. Some things that come up this past week. I see people ask questions or this or that, and I was like, okay, I think I'll talk about this. Okay, first off, this is something I would suggest people learn. The different core setups. Learn to set up the different cores. 2 strand core, 2-strand core, the double cow hitch, 4 strand core, 6-strand core. You see what I'm saying? All the different ways you could set it up. Not necessarily to actually weave a bracelet. Just get you a piece of practice cord and sit down and do this and learn it. Does that make sense? Because I know when I first started in it, I would sit down and I'd be like, oh, that's a 6-strand cord. Oh, and I would struggle setting that up. And then the bracelet wouldn't take that long at all to make. It'd take me longer to set the core strands up than it would to make the bracelet. And I said, sit down and learn this. Now, by all means, I still fumble through this at times, but I'll show you something. I'm gonna throw this one out there. If we're gonna talk about this subject, I'll throw this out there for people. Like I say, if you fall into this category, by no means, I am not putting you down. I'm simply, hopefully you'll see what I'm talking about, and it will, if you put this into practice, it will hopefully increase better quality of your product. Makes sense? I say this to people all the time. I most often use a 5/8 inch buckle. It's very rare. I do not use 3/8 inch buckles. I hate those things. They're too small. Even my wife, when I made her a couple of bracelets in the very beginning with that small buckle, and I asked her, I said, what do you think? And I get her feedback. She said, I don't like the buckle. I said, why? She said, it's too small and I can't. I said, I understand. I said, I feel the same way. So I started using some 1/2 inch buckles, and I don't really like them because they're small also. So most of the time I will use a 5/8 inch buckle. Okay. Now I'm going to show you something. I'm going to zoom in, and hopefully you can see this and it will make sense what I'm trying to show you. Okay. Let's pull this back out. Okay. We see here, basic setup on a on a 2-core strand, but I got the double cow hitch. And why? Because the slot is completely filled from left to right with cord. So you don't have this. We want to prevent that. In my opinion, it's not neat, clean, and tight. And it doesn't look professional. Choose the way you set up your core strands in relation to the size of the buckle. And like I said, I most often use a 5/8 inch buckle. It's very rare that I use anything smaller. Now, if need be, I will use a larger buckle. But these are the most common ones I use. 2-strand core, double cow hitch. That causes 4 strands to be going through that slot. And it pretty much takes up that room. Now, sometimes, and you don't want those strands going through that slot. You don't want them to be loose and sloppy, but yet you don't want so many in there that they're all overlapped each other. Okay? Now, I know sometimes I've had people say, why don't you use a bigger buckle? Because I can fit those 4 in there. If you pull it tight and you get it just right, they will lay down flat and take up that entire space. Does that make sense? That's why I did that. And that's one of the reasons I say learn the different core setups in order to get them to fit in that slot. Makes sense? Okay, now, let's see. The next thing, let me zoom back out. And I'll show you this. This is me. Jig. I made this jig. Obviously, people are like, where in the world did he get that? I made this thing. But this is a heavy-duty jig. I can crank down the tension on it. I've broken buckles before this jig gives out. Because I want my strands tight. Okay? Now, I'll show you this. Now, I'm not measuring this for any purpose, but I am going to show something. Basically, 2-core strand with a double cow hitch at the top. You take those 2 here. Let's zoom back in and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. You see what I'm saying? Take these 2. This cord right here coming from the bottom is what I've got in my thumb right here. I can pull that tight. And I grab the other one for the corresponding one on the other side. I'll pull them both tight. Make sure you get all your cords orientated right. And then you pull, here, let's kind of center this up. And pull these things tight. And what I'll usually do is take my finger and I'll pinch right there. And that'll kind of hold them tight. And then take this strand over here and pull it tight. And then take my thumb and roll that excess. As I'm pulling this strand down, I will use my thumb to roll out that excess. And my forefinger, rolling it. Trying to get that slack out. All the while pushing it up. Does that make sense? And then you just transfer where you're holding that tension. You do the same thing on the other side. Pull. Push it up. Kind of roll it around. Try to get out the slack. That's all that is. Now this is just experience. Okay. Now, see? You See how this one on this edge is kind of sticking up just a little bit? If you pull it just right, it kind of lays down flat and it takes up that entire slot, right? Okay, now I'm going to back out and I'm going to show you. Now, of course, when you're doing this, I would have already, if I'm making this for a specific, wrist size, I would have already had this measured out to just under what I want it to actually be. That way, when I get all this set up, everything's locked in place. And the way my jig is made, I can flip it on its side and there's a screw right here. Loosen this screw up. And the end of this piece, which is down here, which you can't see, that's off camera, I'll put it into my chest and I'll pull the carriage, the sliding piece. Make sense? Just pull it toward me and get it tight. And then I'll tighten up that screw. And that core strands are tight. Nothing's going to slip. Now, granted, sometimes these plastic buckles, not that they break, but they're not the best quality, and sometimes that pressure causes it to snap out. Make sense? But we got that set up. Okay, now, I'm going to show you something else. Here's something right here. It won't come up so much here. Let me zoom back in so you can see what I'm talking about. Maybe this will make sense. It's not going to come up so much in this because the nature of the way these two cow hitches are, it causes there to be a gap in between these two core strands. So what I'm about to show you doesn't come into play so much when you have this gap in here, but on different core setups, especially when you have multiple core strands, as in 4, 6, 8, whatever, this definitely comes into play. And especially with 100% nylon cord, because 100% nylon cord snags very easily. It's soft and it's supple, and people swear by it. Hey, but it snags very easy, unlike the polyester nylon mixed cord, which is stiffer, but it doesn't snag as easy. But everybody's got their personal preference. I can work with either one. But before you go to weave a bracelet, the tip of your working end, where you've melted this thing, because I'll tell you, I know some people, they'll cut it off a roll or whatever, and they'll leave it all frayed. No, do not do that. Singe it. Singe the end of it. That way it's not frayed as you're working with it, first off. But when you go to do it, before you start, take your fingers and run down the edges of it like this. And if you feel like it's got a burr or a snag, because what I'm getting at is, when you've got it in that, between them core strands, and you're pulling it, and it's got a burr on that end, it's got a burr on the end of this, and you're working with these real tight core strands, and you pull it through, there's a potential for it to snag. And we don't want that. We want neat, clean, and tight. We don't want snags. So before you start, take your fingers and just kind of rub down the edges of it. And if it doesn't feel smooth, then smooth it out. Now that one right there is pretty smooth. And here's another thing. Yes, believe me, I burnt my finger. I still burn my fingers. But heat it up, get it soft and molten, and let it sit there for a second. Then take your fingers and quickly. You so often say they want to grab a hold of it. No! Just put your fingers. Sorry, let me do this again. Get it hot and molten. And let it cool for a second. And then reach up here and slide your fingers down quickly. And it'll smooth it out. Don't grab that thing and try to pinch it between your fingers. That's where you get burned. You see what I'm saying? And it smooths out those edges. That way there's no snags. Does that make sense? I need to do it for both ends. Before you ever start, you do it. And I've gotten into the habit of, like, when I go, because I keep my cord on spools hanging up. And when I cut it, I do that. On the piece that I'm going to be working with and the end that's still attached to the cord on the spool. Heat it up for a minute. Wait a couple of seconds. And just do like that. And it smooths it out. Now, you know, sometimes you luck out and you can put the fid on there and it's already fitted for that fid. But sometimes it's not and it comes off. Don't worry about it until you actually go to put the fid on it once you've done all the weaving. That's when you worry about that. But right now you want it to be smooth. That way when you're pulling it through here, because we all know you put it through there and you grab a hold of it and you run it like that. And when you run it like that's singed in, comes across these strands, you don't want it to catch and snag. Make sense? Hopefully, you know, things you never think of, whatever. But here's something else. This is something, I seen somebody ask about this. Actually, like 15, 20 minutes ago, I seen the post. Now, when did they post it? I don't know. But I seen this 15 to 20 minutes ago. And they said they used a jig. And I'm thinking, well, you know, okay. And one of the comments was, you need to use a jig. And I'm thinking, well, the person said they used a jig, so that's not the issue. They were asking about a fishtail. Now, I'm not going to show you how to do a fishtail. I'm going to just show you little tips and tricks. Okay, but they was asking about a fishtail. Well, let's see. When we get this thing started, we know we want to get both our cords on the same side. Right? Either the left or right, doesn't matter. Now let's see if I can explain this. You take this top cord, right? You always work with that top. You got two cords coming out on the same side. Whether it be the left or the right, doesn't matter. But you take that top cord. What you're going to do is you're going to go over and you're going to go through the middle. You're going to pull it out. You see how I pulled it out and it coming? That's where you don't want it to snag. But this right here is the tip. The tip. When you get right here, the fishtail is one of these that you got to constantly hold tight, or it's not going to look right. Your sides, all the wraparounds, are going to be boop, 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 down through there. A lot of them have a trilobite, same way. But what you do, when you get to this point, you pull this side, and this side. You push it up. Or push it up. It doesn't matter which one you do first, but you push it up, and then you pull both sides. Put tension on both sides. Now, here's the key. Tension consistency. The amount of tension I'm pulling right now, when I do it again, push it up and pull. The next repetition, try to maintain this consistency in the amount of tension. That way, all the sides will look the same down through there. Hopefully that makes sense. But you take, like I said, you got two cords on that side. You take his top one. You go over, through that middle, and you come out. Right here. You just keep your fingers on there. You don't have to pinch it hard. You just kind of keep it maintaining so nothing kind of comes unraveled. Push it up and just pull. Pull, pull, pull. See what I'm saying? Now here's the thing. On weaves like this, especially where you're wrapping around these cord strands, pull now. And you can put your finger up under there if you want and push it down through there and pull it out. Push it up and pull. At every stage, pull the tension. I've seen people who do this. Now, it doesn't come into play so much on a fishtail, but on one of these trilobites where you're weaving over, under, and then you take that strand. This is the mistake. They'll go to under, and then they'll wrap around to come over. Then they'll try to pull it tight. Well, every time this thing goes over and under, these core strands is causing resistance. So you're pulling here, and it's not creating a tension over the 3 or 4 core strands to that edge that may be 3 or 4 core strands over. Hopefully that makes sense. Push it up, pull it tight. Pull it tight. Just push it up, pull them tight. Over the top. You get here. Take your fingers, your thumbs, and roll them as you're pulling with your fingers down here. Makes sense? You're pulling this way, but you're using your thumb to kind of roll the slack up. Does that make sense? And then you just kind of holding it with your fingers, kind of keeping it, just a little pressure on it so it doesn't want to come loose. Pull it through. Push it up. That's all you're doing. Okay? Pull it tight. Unroll it. Now, the thing is, you don't have to pull it incredibly tight. What you're trying to do is maintain a consistent tension every wraparound. That way, all these are the same on the sides. And once you do it and you practice it, it becomes second nature to you. Push it up, pull them tight, roll it, come back around, push it, pull it tight. And look at it and stop and look at it and, look up and say, well, I'm starting to pull too much. It's getting narrower, or it's getting wider. It's because your tension is not consistent. That's the key, tension consistency. Push it up, pull it, roll them if need be to get that slack out, and pull it through. See how my thumb's holding everything in place. Now, I know, you get cramps when you first start doing this. It's hard. You get minor rope burns on your fingers. Fingers cramp up. Hey, believe me, I'll show you a trick. I can walk away from it now. And I ain't got to worry about it coming undone. But see, and you just do that. That's all there is to it. You just keep a constant tension on it. Don't rush it. Always stop and check and look at it, see what it looks like. Don't rush it. Don't get impatient. That's like I tell people, it's patience. Patience and attention to detail. And that's all there is to it. But hopefully that helped. Now, with that said, give us a like, give us a share, give us a subscribe. But as always, just remember, neat, clean, and tight, and happy weaving.